you!
I never understood how a creator, we say that a creator has us warring against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, what is that?
Well, that's simply the fact that the creator has nothing to do with all of this. I think is one of the basic things. Yes, there is a creator. I don't think all of this came out by just happenstance, but when we look at the human experience on the face of this planet, I'm not too sure that the creator of the universe had a great deal to do with it. We deal in a very, very narrow time frame. We look upon what we read about in the Bible as taking us all the way back to the beginning of time. Well, that just really isn't so. There wasn't a thing in the Bible about the dinosaurs, and we know that they were here. Jurassic Park existed. We have a very, very narrow time frame, and that time frame that we think is it really got established within the last 2,000 years. But we can go back to Mesopotamia, which is where evidently all of our civilizations began, and we could look at things that were happening there 250,000 years ago. And what was happening there were civilizations. What was happening there was buildings that sometimes had buildings that were 80 stories tall.
On this planet?
On this planet.
How come we're not taught that in school?
Well, I don't know why you're not taught that in school, because we always have the idea that it came...
Not that, no.
We have the idea that, perhaps the beginning of our civilization was in the Nile Valley, or maybe it was Greece or Athens. Well, no, it wasn't. They had great civilizations going on back in that antiquity. Now, we can use this, the source for this are those ancient writers. We now can read those ancient tablets from the people of Sumer. That was where the cradle of civilization came from the Sumerian language. All of the languages on the earth really dovetail right into it. And they're telling us this story of what was happening here. Civilizations rose and fell, and rose and fell. And now we know that there was a civilization here that was composed of those that did not come from Earth. The evidence of that is rather overwhelming. So,
could you backtrack on that for a minute? I don't know that, and I'm available to be enlightened.
All right. We look at what the ancient Sumerians and Babylonians say, and just to give you a quick look at it, they tell us that there is a planet that is, they call it the 12th planet, because they consider the moon and the sun a planet too. So this would be the 12th planet that comes in orbit every 3,600 years. Now the Naval Observatory says that there is such a body out there, and it is a large one, about the size of Jupiter. Amazing. That's exactly what the ancient Sumerians were said. That it could very well.
Does it have a modern scientific name?
The name of it now is Murdoch, I believe is what they call it. And that's the name they're giving it. It's not a scientific name. That's the name that the ancient
scientific is the word Saturn.
No, they don't have that, because we haven't looked at it yet. You see, we have to see everything around us before we can believe it, but we can look at the movement of stars, as they do at the Naval Observatory. We can find out that there are celestial beings that we haven't seen yet. Maybe a planet around a sun out there.
When you say celestial beings, the word beings should perhaps be...
bodies.
Okay.
We weren't talking of angels.
I wasn't talking of angels. No, not little ones or big ones. But they were talking about this. But I think some of the more interesting things that they said, that they gave us the history of that civilization, which came here before man existed. They were mining gold from Africa because they needed the gold in the atmosphere of their planet that moved around. They got tired of that working, so they wanted some sort of robots or something to come in. So they engaged in some genetic engineering with the indigenous primates down in Africa and made the workers. And
what is the literary source for this fascinating information?
Yes, the literary source for this is the ancient Sumerian text. Now, these old boys were either science fiction writers that make Gene Roddenberry look like he was not even in kindergarten yet, or they were historians. So you got to make them out. I think one of the more incredible things to add validity to what they're saying was developed by NASA just 3 years ago in the book of Zecharia Sitchin's, where he talked about the wars of gods and men. He's talking about the war between these two brothers that come from this planet, and they perfectly describe a nuclear attack on what they said was a spaceport on what is now the Sinai Peninsula, and then the two R&R places and a little seaport on the Sea of Aqaba. That this happened 2,000 years BC, 2064, I think it was. Well, it was a neat story, and it was perfect. The flash, the column of of smoke, mushroom cloud, the winds, and then the cloud that drifted over to the Zagros Mountains and killed everything in the peninsula. About 3 years ago, NASA was flying over the peninsula and was testing its new X-ray radar, where it could look at ancient riverbeds and things. And when it came over the center of the Sinai Peninsula, there were 3 round black imprints in the ground. There were 2 more at Sodom and Gomorrah, the ancient site of Sodom and Gomorrah, and another one on the seashore. We see those black prints also in New Mexico. We also see them in Nevada. We also see them at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We also see them in Soviet Union. All right, my point being here that the ancient Sumerians were telling us of an atomic holocaust, telling us where it was and when it was, and we now can validate that that was true. We have to be very careful and say, well, these people couldn't have an atomic bomb because, you know, the guys from MIT just weren't there then. And so they were, and we have historical evidence of it. So new credence needs to be taken into what these old people were telling us. We know that they were developing great civilizations, and we know that we don't talk about it in any of our litany today.
Right.
It's never mentioned whatsoever. And we do know that there was a great effort between those from this 12th planet and the people that they created, and here we were establishing the elitist order, the workers and the elitist ones.
Pardon me for being rude, risking just to interrupt, but I must follow up on something. Is there any information of the sort you've just been kind enough to share with us in the book titled "The Book Your Church Doesn't Want You to Read"?
He refers to various stories. There isn't really.
Okay. Then you may get back to your...
Yeah, I think just the point that Bill's trying to make is that there are a lot of things that have been shelved for the convenience of those that control things and the inconvenience for the rest of us. Mm-hmm. And this is just basically an example.
In this case, we would seem to have a perhaps unprecedented situation in which both science and organized religion are fellow partners in the shelving.
Sometimes unwittingly, and sometimes in concert. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you found that out.
Well, my mother had an uncle when I was a child who worked in the Vatican Secretary of State's office as a civilian. And I don't remember a whole lot about him, but I just remember that when he would come home, my 2 uncles who were federal judges and my other uncle who was a Catholic priest, and we have politicians in the family, and everyone would come over, and I remember sitting and listening to the men talk. And one thing I do remember my dad saying all the time is that there's never been a political movement that wasn't a little religious. And there's never been a religious movement that wasn't a little political. Mm-hmm. And consequently, I grew up understanding that there is, in point of fact, and to my understanding, religion is one hand, politics is another. And they help orchestrate things. These are powerful entities, and consequently we know that that's been the case in ancient history, that the kings of great nations were also the high priest who represented the deities also. Well, we've got the same kind of thing going today. Happily, we have divisions in government, so of course the church is invited to the White House for their prayer meetings, and they open up the Congress of Prayer. But nonetheless, the military still has their paid chaplains, and there is a collusion, as far as I'm concerned, between politics and religion, because they're both philosophies, and they're both philosophies which promote, as Bill was saying, an elitist concept of, well, somebody's going to run the world, and somebody's got to do this, it might as well be us.
Wasn't it true?
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
This is the end for you, my master.